Hey guys, for well over a year I've been asked a number of times, many times, how Japanese feel about the American military bases in Japan. The last couple of days I've been asked by a lot of people again about it. I don't know what triggered it, but everybody's been asking about it. I haven't wanted to make a video about it because I know what sort of reactions I get to videos like that. You know, the whale one and the Cove one. Most people have only ever had one perspective or one point of view on these subjects, and if you try to give them another point of view, a lot of the people don't like it. They just can't get it. Some people do. Some people are very compassionate and can understand that there's always two points to everything, and when it comes to things to do with Japan, that it's really about Japanese people more than it is about people from other countries and what they think of what Japan does. But I'll have a go. The question I keep getting is, how do Japanese people feel about the American bases on Japan? Well, what we see on the TV in Japan is usually when something's happened. The most common recently has been noise complaints. So the people that live near the American bases have to put up with helicopters and fighters 24 hours a day, which I'm sure if that was happening in any other country, the people would be unhappy about that too. The other thing that we see, and that they've been seeing for 65 years, has been rapes and murders by American servicemen on Japanese women and men. So basically, the way the Japanese see it is these guys are guests in Japan, and a small percentage. I know most American servicemen are great people. Most American servicemen and women are great people, but there's, unfortunately, over the last 65 years, there's been a small percentage of them who have been raping and killing the local people, which of course makes them pretty unpopular with a lot of the local people. So short story is, many Japanese people don't want them here. Okinawa is actually one of the most beautiful places in Japan, but Japanese people don't like going there anymore because it's overrun by American military, and it's had such a bad rap on TV with the stuff that's happened there that people are scared to go there in their own country. So, you know, we hear the other point of view, and there is people on both sides of the fence here in Japan. I mean, there's also people in Japan that say, you know, that they need the American bases here for their safety. There is some Japanese people that say that, but there's also other Japanese people that say that they don't, and that having the American bases in Japan just makes them a target. That if they do get into a fight with Iran or with Korea or someone, if the Americans got into a fight with Iran or Korea or someone, America's so much further away, Japan's nice and close and full of American bases. So if anyone wants to strike an American base, it's much easier to hit them in Japan than it is to hit them in America. So, you know, there's two sides to that argument. There's also a lot of non-Japanese people who like to say that the US has a right. Well, let's be honest, Americans, there's a lot of Americans who say that the US has a right to occupy Japan because they won the war. I just made a couple of notes here earlier. I could think of 22 countries that were actually on the Allied side during World War II. What Hollywood and a lot of American documentaries seem to forget was that there was, well, at least 22 I could think of, Allied countries fighting the Japanese during World War II. So it would be fair to say that more than 22 countries have a right to occupy Japan because they won a war against them 65 years ago, including Russia, which is just across the water. So for some Americans to use that argument that, oh, we won the war against Japan 65 years ago, well, they need to have another look at the history books and realise that it may well have been their bomb that wiped out two cities here, but it was a team effort, and that it doesn't give them a right to be here. If we want to follow through on that, we can also say that any country that's ever won a war has the right to occupy that country forever, or at least 65 years according to this argument, which means that Russia would still be controlling Germany and would never have pulled out of East Germany. And I believe there was a couple of countries that had wars with America that won. One would have been Vietnam. I seem to remember they pulled out of Saigon at the end there, so that they actually lost that one. And wasn't there one in South America, wasn't it Cuba, that the Americans invaded and got their asses kicked and had to leave? Which means that if we use that logic, that if you win a war you get to occupy that country forever, America would now be controlled by Vietnam or Cuba. wouldn't it? I mean, these are just some ideas, you know. This is just putting the other point of view instead of just seeing the same Hollywood, you know, American documentary point of view. This is just looking at the other point of view. I mean, Japan belongs to Japan. It's not controlled by America, not openly. You know, it may be manipulated financially. I mean, there's been a lot of Japanese leaders who've wanted the Americans to leave and still do, and they'll be saying, right, we want them out, you know, by this date, and then the Americans will come over here, the ambassadors and you know, occasionally the presidents will come over here and meet, and after they leave, all of a sudden the same leaders are saying, oh, we'll put up with them, and it's financial pressure. It's the same as Australia. Australia has American spy bases in it, and the reason that they're there against the will of a lot of Australian people is that America has trade tariffs with Australia, and with a wave of a pen can up those trade tariffs, and all the wheat that Australia exports to America can suddenly be too expensive for Americans to buy. So that's sort of financial pressure. So if we want to get onto that subject, you know, if a country's financial GDP, economic GDP dictates that they can dictate what other countries do, what's going to happen in a few years? It's pretty well accepted now that the way China's growing, that it'll end up more powerful financially than America. So does that mean that if we use this logic that, okay, if you control the money, you can control every other country, does that mean that in a few years' time, when China is the biggest GDP in the world, has the biggest GDP in the world, and has the most turnover of money and the most import-export going on, does that mean that China can dictate what America does and China can have bases in America? You know, I think if we want compassion for other countries and for other people, we need to imagine turning the tables and say, okay, well, what if that was us? You know, what if the Vietnamese said, oh, okay, well, we kicked you out of Saigon, so I guess now we control America? Or the Cubans said, you know, Bay of Pigs, bad luck, you know, now we control America. Or the Chinese said, okay, well, now we've got a bigger GDP than America, and America's economy's, you know, in trouble, and we've got more money power, so now we control America, we want bases in America, or we won't do business with you. It'd be the same thing, wouldn't it? I mean, I'm not an economic expert, and I'm not a political expert, I'm not a history expert. But just looking at it from the Japanese point of view, and I did talk to Japanese people about this when I did the interview series. I talked to Japanese people about this, and then never used the video. And the reason is that the Japanese people that I interview watch my videos, and they saw the attacks that came at them for the dolphin video, for the cove video, and they saw the attacks that came at them for the whale video. And there's no way in the world I was going to submit those people to the redneck attacks that we know we're going to get for this one. You know, so, you know, someone suggested to me that I make this video and then not allow comments. And I'm not going to do that because that's not my style. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put a video below about how rude is not necessarily polite. And I'd encourage anyone that's thinking about leaving a rude or aggressive comment to consider that video before they make their comment. Because I think everybody's got a right to comment. A lot of people will disagree with what I'm saying, but I don't think anybody has the right to be rude or aggressive when it comes to addressing these subjects. I think we should keep in mind this is Japan and it belongs to Japan. And when it comes to any subject, I mean, you can imagine if we turned the tables on this again and started to tell, you know, if the people who lived in India, just going back to the cove for a sec, imagine if the people in India said, our religion says that anybody who eats cows is a heathen because cows are sacred and you shouldn't eat cows. So if Indian people went to America or Australia or Europe and started protesting and telling us that we shouldn't eat cows, you know, and it's a similar thing. You know, it's what a lot of Western countries do. They go and impose their wills on other countries, you know, and they wouldn't allow it in their own country. There's no way that America would allow foreign bases in its country, you know, and neither should it. America belongs to America. Americans can decide what happens inside the boundaries of America. It's the way it should be, and it should be the same for Japan. That these guys should have a right to decide, you know, whose guns are here, you know, whose military bases are here. And they should be able to decide without any financial pressure or without any other sort of pressure on them to accept something that they shouldn't have to accept. So anyway, let's see if we can get some reasonable and intelligent comments on this one.